You can't be serious, man. You cannot be serious!
With various people, this podcast, it started off with Don Scott, Mike Sheehan and me, and I, and then it became Don Scott and I, because Mike withdrew for some reason, which we've canvassed plenty of times, not because he didn't like us, but because he got shanghaied by the AFL. And then Don left, and we have Greg here, who comes in every month, and we had Doug Hawkins the other day, and we have a bloke called Richard Wollstonecroft from Muff, which is the the music underground something film federation or something. So the reason I'm telling you this is we have been doing it for 4 years and interviewed plenty of people. This I think is the fourth time. Maybe it's the third, but this is certainly the third time, maybe the fourth time we've had Dr. Robbie Peterson in to speak to us about the ongoing saga of what is the World Health Organization, the COVID vaccine thing, the intrusion of governments into your life, the vaccines, big pharma. I don't know what Robbie is on about again. And he's brought with him Dr. Duncan Syme, who is the Vice President of AMPS, which is the Australian Medical Practitioners...
Professional Society.
I knew AMPS is an acronym, as a matter of fact, Greg, because you can pronounce it. The Australian Medical Practitioners Society. He's brought Dr. Duncan Syme in with him. Now, Robbie, we have gone over this several times. You are an outlier, that is... An outlier meaning you're away from the mainstream of what your profession holds as true and correct about the vaccines, but there's a hell of a lot of people like you on this side of the planet where we live and on the other side of the planet that back you or you back them, and there's an ongoing discussion about just where we are with what's going on with the health of the world, who's running it and why. It seems a lot of corruption, a lot of dishonesty going on, and it's very hard to find out what is correct. For want of a better word, I've got a feeling people will think that you, and maybe I haven't heard the doc here, Dr. Duncan, maybe are a conspiracy theorist, but as people say, just because you might have an original thought that might be valid, but it's outside the mainstream, that doesn't make you a conspiracy theorist. It makes you a lateral thinker. So with all that, Doc, I'll call you Robbie, and I'll call you Duncan. Robbie, welcome to You Cannot Be Serious. Is it the third or fourth time? Fourth. It is fifth. Fourth or fifth. Well, shit. Four I would have settled at. If I'd known it was the fifth, you wouldn't be here. Yeah. No, you would be. No. So what are you on about? I've got a series of questions I'll ask you. What do you think we're having the wool pulled over our eyes by the thing that crippled this nation, this state, which is COVID, or is it bigger than that?
It's bigger than that, and yes, the wool has been pulled over our eyes, and the science which is out, unfortunately to Australians, it's not being released. Worldwide, there's more access, but the independent studies from overseas and the various tabulations and figures that are being given to the Australian public versus reality are two different things. But what I'm here for, what Duncan and myself are here for, May the 27th, the World Health Assembly are meeting to sign 194 countries up to a pandemic treaty, which is basically giving the World Health Organization, an organization sponsored by the UN, sponsored by the World Economic Forum, it gives them total control of the countries of the world's management of health. And
what is wrong with that?
What is wrong with it is the fact that what they have put forward, they've put forward it in two documents, that international health regulations which are in existence, These international health regulations used to be recommendations. They're now making them binding and mandatory. They've made 307 changes, and the changes within these regulations would make your blood curdle, and we'll get onto that in a little bit.
Now, Dr. Duncan Syme, as the Vice President of the Australian Medical Practitioners Society.
Professional society.
Professional, I'll get that. It's the third time I've stumbled on that. Professional Society, Dr. Duncan. Are you on board with all? Why is there such a push to invalidate most of what the World Health Forum or the World Health Organisation under Mr. Tedros, whatever his name is, why is there such a push to invalidate most of all this stuff, Dr. Duncan?
Well, basically, what Rob said is absolutely correct. These regulations, these legal documents, are going to have a profound influence on Australians' health freedom and their future prosperity. So,
why? That's a very generic term. That's good,
Yep.
but why is it? So, if someone decrees, the Victorian government decrees that you've got to have some more vaccines, COVID vaccines, you're saying that it is the right of the general public not to have to succumb to this by some mandatory stroke of the pen made in Parliament, that you can say, no, I don't wish to do that because it's not been proven, there's been no testing, it's a bogus thing and none of it works. And I read out the other day in front of you or someone about, and I just read them out in front of Greg, there's 20 things that said that the vaccine didn't do, and but it's pushed that it did.
yeah, so that's exactly right, Sam. There's been a great deal of lies told by our government, and they've been proven to be lies over the last 3 to 4 years. And I suppose in what I would like to say as the Australian Medical Professional Society, we are effectively the alternate AMA, and we not only are we sort of defending doctors from overreach from overzealous employers and regulators, we want to bring back medicine to being able to have free, open, robust debate about medical, scientific, and all other matters, not be shut down and censored by regulators and government. So your listeners may not be aware, in fact many people are not aware, that the medical regulator put out a statement at the beginning of COVID, which basically said doctors are not allowed to say anything adverse against the vaccinations. And that basically shut down proper discussion and scientific debate about a very new product that had never been tested on, had minimal safety testing on humans, and basically skipped most of the animal studies that would normally be done for a medical product, and certainly vaccines. So most vaccines normally would take 7 to 10 years to produce, and they need that length of time to see if there are any sort of long-term effects.
Dr. Duncan, were you aware of this at the time, or is this something that now we can look back on in hindsight and say, well, this stuff should have been known. I mean, medicine is governed by the cornerstone of medicine is medical ethics, and that is the Hippocratic Oath, the first do no harm, and then you look at things like the Nuremberg Code, where basically people should not be experimented on, and this was everybody higher up in the chain would have known that what they were doing was essentially an experimentation on the public. And I think even Greg Hunt, the health minister at the time, said this is the biggest clinical trial ever held in the world. So they've embarked on this, and they've conflated the COVID emergency, saying it was going to cause a lot more deaths than it actually did, and this was based on false modelling. and then they've tried to scare individuals into taking a medication that was basically had not had the proper safety testing.
But in retrospect, didn't it save the world, the vaccine?
I think there's great dispute about that. Yeah, there's many. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, the statistics show that in actual fact the number of people that died were no greater than the average for the previous 5 years, and they were no greater than the average of a severe flu. The World Health Organisation, in their propaganda around the world, said that 3.4, how did they got this figure? They said 3.4% of people were going to die. I mean, you've got to be kidding me. Where could they come up with a figure like that? Well, as it turned out, it was 0.2%. And the other thing about it was, because 80% of the people that died were over 80 and had 3 or more comorbidities. So this was the greatest propaganda hysteria of all time.
Yeah, and run by Dr. Fauci in America, and it always gets back to the political allegiances of who is running it. He started under Trump when he was the president, and Trump disputed a lot of just was doubtful and sceptical about some of the things, and then Trump got run out of office or got put out of office, and Biden came in, and they just went from the ground floor to the penthouse, just with all this stuff that has since been proven to be ineffective and not reliable. And you talk about the international health regulations and the pandemic treaty. No one can. And then they said that it didn't come from Wuhan; it came from pangolins and bloody
in the wet
bats.
market, yeah.
And then and it just became a complete exercise of corruption and dishonesty, and no one could follow it. And there's plenty of people like you. I don't know if you're speaking them factually or not. There's plenty of people like you, and I watch it overseas, that dispute all that's going on. And I'm wondering what role the Australian government is playing in it. Are they just subservient and saying, if the WHO says jump, they're just saying how high, or have they got a mind of their own?
Absolutely. This is the real worry. We have a situation where, getting back to the WHO early on, and Trump was one, he promoted hydroxychloroquine, and we knew that hydroxychloroquine and ivermectin were really useful. In fact, hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people could have been saved. But what happened was the WHO said that it didn't work. And they said that because it enabled the release of these experimental jabs based on the fact that there was no known cure. And the fact that, therefore, they had to absolutely nail hydroxychloroquine and ivermectin. Now we have a situation where last year the science came out on the composition of these jabs. Now, the TGA, who allowed these products to be given to the Australian people, they accepted the fact that Pfizer in particular wasn't prepared to tell what the whole composition of the vaccines were. And they accepted that. Well, we've subsequently found out that a number of extra goodies in them, including a thing called SV40, which is a monkey virus component, which was used to actually help and promote another thing which is just frightening, and that was DNA. These were supposed to be messenger RNA products, and DNA, which is the very core of our existence, in our nuclear component, that was in them. So we were totally hoodwinked. Not only that, the TGA had the Pfizer data, and as Duncan said before, the standard treatment or assessment time for a vaccine was 7 to 10 years. Now, and if in that 7 to 10 year period, if a total of 50 people died, whether it be year 2, 3, 5, 6, once worldwide 50 people died from a vaccine trial, it was immediately stopped. Well, we found out last year that they had the 3 months, in the 3 months Pfizer data, that 1,226 people died in the first 3 months. and yet they said it was safe. So we've been hoodwinked, and now what's going on, this World Health Organisation pandemic treaty is it includes, apart from the health regulations, we're going back to the same old, they'll have the power for lockdowns, mandates.
Yes. So the most not serious, the most culpable thing is that the discussion, the countering point of view was censored on social platforms over if you had a differing point of view from the government stated policy that backed AstraZeneca and Pfizer, and what's the other one? Moderna. Yeah, if you had a point of view that varied from what those big pharma companies were on about, even the discussion of people who had a counterpoint of view was taken off social platforms by Facebook and Twitter and Instagram, and that's what made it ridiculously suspicious that they want to hide. And then I think they passed a law in Congress that they couldn't be held responsible, or they weren't culpable for any future ailments that people got because it wasn't tested. It was tested as it went. Yeah, really is what people are on about.
Absolutely, and in this, the new international health regulations, one of the things they want, the WHO want to have the power of, is exactly what we're being confronted with, the power of misinformation and disinformation. And what that gives them, they're saying that their science is the only science, and they will not allow independent scientists or medicos to challenge their trials or their data. And they want to have this, so it's basically goodbye any scientific debate. And that's just one of these 307 changes. It is absolutely frightening.
Duncan, what can we do about it?
Well, we've got to educate the public, and it's. This is a big.
That's hard to do because a lot of what you're saying runs contrary to what they've believed.
Well, it has to be done from a grassroots base, and this platform, like many other, I suppose, alternate media, has to be, the broadcast. You're doing what the mainstream media should be doing in allowing different views to come out and people to think about the alternate options, because at the moment they're just still having the same propaganda shoved down their throat. And as Rob says, if these pieces of legal documents go through by the WHO, the Australian government will be obliged to follow them, and they will then use, it'll be censorship on steroids.
Would Australia be represented there on May 27th?
Yes, there's at the World Health Organisation, it's a body of 194 nations, and they sit round. They're basically a bunch of faceless bureaucrats who then will be asked the question. They'll put forward these amendments, which are incredibly, how would you say, they're threatening to your bodily autonomy, your civil rights, all the sort of health freedoms you previously thought were present prior to COVID. But this will then basically formally legalise what they've done through the COVID period, where you...
And they'll all vote and it'll go through, will it?
Yes, but sorry, Duncan, but there's another component, and this is really important. The WHO is not only composed of these countries, they're also composed of what they're calling public-private partnerships, which are private individuals, multinationals, and including, of course, the number one anti-hero, Bill Gates. Now, these private-public partnerships with individuals, they contribute 85% of the funding to the WHO versus the 15% from the countries. So they also have the power to make decisions on the board. So what's happening? Well, I'll give you an example of what's happening. one of the international health regulations that they've put forward, and we're going to be signing up to, is that new vaccines only need, you ready for this, 100-day trials. So goodbye to the 7-10-year normal, and goodbye to the fact that the Pfizer, when we actually found out the real data, which was a 6-month thing, they now are saying in these international health regulation changes, you only need 100-day trials.
On top of that, there'll be they want them fully indemnified. So if anything goes wrong, there's no blame to go back onto the manufacturers.
So you come to this little podcast, and we have quite a big reach. But the mainstream media don't touch any of this stuff because they think it's conspiratorial. It affects their bottom line, funding and advertising by big pharma. It is all just a political maelstrom of people getting involved to suppress the information that they don't want their readers or viewers to have because it affects their bottom line. And I watched Dr. Phil. I don't know if you've heard of Dr. Phil. Do you remember Dr. Phil?
Yeah, I can.
Well, he was on The View, which is a thing on television yesterday, and they were anti him. He came on and he said that to lock down the schools and not give tuition to school children and underage students is the most disgraceful thing that's ever happened, because they are the least vulnerable people to get any disease, let alone COVID. And he said it'll take generations of people. He said it'll take at least a decade for those people who've been not allowed to go to school because of the COVID restrictions to get back on par with their learning. And he was roundly condemned by the people on The View, and he said it's just a fact. He said this is nonsense, and the mainstream media stop doing it because it affects their bottom line.
Yeah, that's absolutely correct, Sam. It's really, if people want to look at this, it's follow the money. Now, the people who've made the most amount of money during COVID are, I think, are the top 10 billionaires in the country, and they've gone, their wealth prior to COVID was, I think, 700 billion. It's now gone to 1.5 trillion. And the rest of the population, the 99% of the rest of the world, they've gone backwards. And this essentially, what the WHO are doing, is there. It's a grab for both power and money, and what I'd like to term the pandemic industrial complex. So they're setting up through these legal documents a system whereby they can call a pandemic, and then they can find whatever pathogen they want, and then produce a vaccine to that pathogen in the space. They can actually produce a vaccine within 2 weeks with this technology, but obviously without any safety checks, and then force the population potentially to have it. They will undoubtedly use propaganda to make people scared. Oh, you've got to take this thing because otherwise you're going to die, just like they did with COVID, when the reality was 99.75% of the population would have sailed through. So, and again, that was skewed. That the elderly population had a slightly greater risk. That, under 20, you had essentially no risk whatsoever. And then that was also, as Rob explained, it was related to comorbidities.
Well, look, it's even worse. If we sign up to this, we're going back on steroids, what Daniel Andrews did. And it's not only that they're going to mandate, they're going to they'll have the provision to restrain people, to forcefully give them an experimental 100-day or less experimental jab. I mean, this is a nightmare, and we're signing up to it. And the average Australian has got no idea this is what our government's going to do. And the discussion on it's been zero. It's been hush-hush. And we are wanting to scream out to try and awake the public. We cannot go back to where we were before, only it's on steroids. Now, the other part of the whole thing with the World Health Organization, this pandemic treaty, is its tentacles go even further to they're going to use the One Health component. And what that basically means, it gives them total control of the biosphere as well, which is plants, animals, land, and have a guess what? The magic environment. So they're going to have basically a one world, new world order, totalitarian world. We are basically, if we sign up to this, we're signing up to a one world, new world order. And Tetros, you mentioned before, Sam, at Davos, which happened 3 weeks ago, the World Economic Forum, Tetros actually publicly said the new world order starts with the pandemic treaty.
So why are you going on with this?
It's called freedom. It's called 100,000 Australians gave their lives fighting for freedom. They are taking away all of our freedoms.
I do know what you said, Duncan, about they had a covert camera. Covert means secret, does it? Not overt. They had a covert camera at an employee of Pfizer. You would know this over a drink. At a bar, and he said they were developing infections or pandemics so that they could get ahead of the curve and have a vaccine ready when it was released onto the market. The infections, they could had a vaccine ready to go. So they were developing things that they wanted to. They were developing the cause, so that they had the
cure.
They were developing the effect so that they had the cure when it came onto the market. Completely bogus and dishonest.
Absolutely. And
he was sacked.
Yeah, this is being stated. They have stated that they totally accept that countries around the world will develop new pathogens. I mean, this is insanity, but they're encouraging that.
So, anyhow... Not sure.
I just feel like as if we're being shot in the guts. I mean, it's so hard
look
to
what Duncan
come to
said
grips with. And
what's happened in this country is that the media has been taken over, and the information that came out that Sam mentioned before with regards to all the scientists that were writing into Twitter during the pandemic, they were totally censored, because they weren't following the narrative. They were screaming blue murder, saying lockdowns with a respiratory virus was the worst thing you could possibly do, and it was all censored. What we're trying to do is to awaken people, and we really need people. We are on the edge of a cliff here. It is virtually a coup. We're in the middle of a coup with regards to our sovereignty and our democracy. It's that serious. At the moment, at this point in time, Duncan and myself are connected with about 24, 25 other organisations. We're called the Aligned Council of Australia, and it's a number of different organisations who are all awake up to the WHO, and at the moment we have around a bit over 500,000 people. And what we're trying to do over this next 3 months, before May the 27th, is to urge people to go and read up on the WHO, go to australiaexitsthewho.com and look and see exactly what's going on, because we are fighting for our freedom here, and we need people to go and have a look, and then we need to have the most incredible pressure put on our parliamentarians to at least have a debate, because this is being pushed through under the cover.
Yeah. So I've read this out before, but this was what a finding came from the people who are on your side of what goes on about all this. And this is what they said about the origins of COVID. They says they lied. Hang on, I'll just get it back. It keeps going off. They lied about COVID death statistics. They lied that there was no treatment. They lied about ventilators. They lied about hospitals were overflowing. They lied about masks. They lied about lockdowns. They lied about outdoor transmission. They lied about safety vaccines. They lied about the extent of the vaccine injuries. They lied about calling the shots vaccines. They lied about the need for vaccine passports. They lied about the rates of myocarditis, whatever that is. They lied about excess deaths, and they lied about the claim that they were following the science. So that was that was a group of people who since came out and studied all that about what was going on in the States, and as I say, it just became a political battle between what Trump, when he started it, when he was in charge, and what Biden did when he was in charge, and he sided with Dr. Fauci, and those people said that, released that report, said that it was completely bogus, and so we will be accused of promoting conspiracy theorists, and they'll say you got a couple of wackos on here, and we would only just say, we would suggest that if anyone disagrees, we'd love to have someone give a counterpoint of view, because I have not really any idea what I'm talking about. Happy to say that, but we just follow the information that's given in front of us.
Just quickly, Sam.
Yes.
AMPS have got this book. Too Many Dead, an inquiry into Australia's excess mortality. What's this about, Duncan?
So this was AMPS, the executive at AMPS decided after the Bureau of Statistics showed that there was been a rising all-cause mortality in Australia since the rollout of the injections, which has been persistent for, I think, was
3 years.
For close to 3 years. When normally all-cause mortality is a very constant figure. We saw it rise not during the COVID, sort of early COVID period in Australia, but it started rising after the rollout of the injections. And Senator Ralph Babet of the United Australia Party put a motion to the Senate, now government, to say, listen, this is pretty unusual, shouldn't we be looking into this? And it got voted down by the Senate, and not once but twice. So we said, well, nobody's talking about this, the media aren't talking about this, we need to look into this ourselves. So we commissioned, I think there's about 31 authors in here, or 17 papers, looking into why Australia and basically all the other heavily vaccinated countries around the world were having this same effect of rising dead in their population, above what would be expected, significantly rising. And all the governments around the world were ignoring it. And so we commissioned this book, and it's got some very well credentialed authors talking about why the causes could be.
So are you two boys ostracised or marginalised in the medical profession for your stance, or are you embraced by a fair number of people who are on your side?
There's a growing number. As I said, Sam, last year a lot of scientific information came out about what was actually in the jabs, which they had totally covered up, and it's a growing industry. Just adding to what Duncan said, this is quite incredible. I'm bringing up the fact that the chief data analyst of New Zealand Health,
yes,
he announced in November he did an analysis of all the jabs in New Zealand, and he found this incredible, absolute nightmare where he had the data of over 4 million jabs, knew every single location, time, place. 1 in 1,000 people that were given Pfizer died. And he was able to locate 23 different sites, injection sites, where, would you believe it, in one of them there was 100% fatality within 6 months, going all the way down to 4 or 5%. He released this to the world, and he was promptly arrested that night. And he's got a court case coming up, but we have the feeling that they're going to and he released the data all around the world, except for one thing. Did you hear about it in Australia?
No.
No. We seem to be one of the few countries that aren't aware of this whistleblower, Mr. Young from the New Zealand Health. This is unbelievable.
So finally, doctors, whoever is running this state in the future, if they decide that there's a pandemic about to hit us again and it is mandatory to go and have a vaccine, you would say that we should resist that entirely if you wanted to, or can you be compelled? Can the government compel you to go and have an injection against your will if you can't? By not having it, you can't go about your place of business, you can't go into a shop, you can't drive for 15 kilometres outside you. What is all that about?
Okay, so yesterday Queensland law decision was made against the Queensland government, the police department, the court.
Restrictive things.
The court found that it was against natural justice that mandates are in place. And so mandates are against
infringement on your human rights.
Absolutely, and it's in the Nuremberg Code. It's actually in our vaccination code.
Nuremberg.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
And so mandates, jabs, the whole shebang. It's against our freedom.
All right.
And as I said, 100,000 people.
Well, we're all dancing to the same tune, so if you have to come in again for the 6th time, Doc, and clarify this, I don't know what I'll do. I'll have a meltdown. So thanks again. It's a very interesting thing, and it is the health of the world being run, pulled and tugged and pushed by political interest. And somewhere in between who's doing the pulling and who's doing the pushing, the truth prevails. So we'll just keep on this, Greg, and it's been a thank you, Dr. Duncan Syme. I'll just get this
Sam.
right.
Thank
He
you
is the Vice President of the Australian Medical Professional
That's the one.
Society. Is that right?
Yep.
That's it.
Professional Society. And Dr. Robbie Peterson is an ex-North Melbourne footballer who kicked, I think, 7 goals in his last game and then got the arse, didn't you?
No, nearly.
Now, what? You'll clear that up for us. What happened?
No, I retired when I graduated, so...
Yeah, no, that's right. It sounded better what I said.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Thank you very much for coming in to... you cannot be serious, what you've said. So, fantastic. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, Sam.
Here we go.
Thanks,
now,
Greg.
what
Thanks,
am I
Sam.
doing?
Thanks,
I'm
Greg.
doing this.